Ex-flat earthers, what made you come round? Not personally, but a friend's colleague who was a flat earther managed to disengage with that theory because if the earth was flat, they would have found some way to monetize the edge of the earth. Basically his extreme detest of capitalism outweighed his flat earth belief. Okay, so I wasn't technically a flat earther, but I got sucked into a loophole of watching some theories on it. And I went to my boyfriend and was like, whoa, watch this video with me, it actually sounds like it could be true, and he looked at me and said, are you fucking stupid? That snapped me right out of it. Not me, but I spoke to a former flat earther a couple of years ago. The conversation was illuminating. Essentially, he got drawn in by trying to understand the stance of flat earthers, which lead him to flat earth websites, and lots of YouTube videos, with the common misconceptions about the flat earth explained away, and the one-sided problems of the round earth argued. He said it was easy to believe. He spent a few months delving into it in his free time, but didn't really tell many people because he wanted to be sure before preaching it to anyone else, so he kept gathering information, and the more he gathered, the more it made sense. Now this all came undone when he started asking questions on a flat earth forum that he used to lurk on. He mentioned he was from Australia, and the responses became interesting. Australia is a big problem for flat earthers, since the traditional flat earth map is centered around the North Pole. It means that flying from Australia to the USA, for example, means flying over the North Pole to get to the USA. Either that, or the plane will need to fly all the way around. How could it possibly fly that distance, and how do direct flights to South America work, since it is about as far away as possible, and quicker? Members of this forum started to argue about Australia, with some arguing that Australia doesn't even exist, and some accusing him of being a plant. This very quickly dissipated the illusion that they were a group of like-minded freethinkers. How can you take a group seriously if this group considered the country a fabrication? I knew all along. I was just stuck in a loop of having to fight the flat earth corner because people just don't shut up about it. I shut myself off to it on the internet, just barred myself. Once the online forum wasn't there to argue about it anymore, I had to fight the battles of building back relationships. It really is that damaging of a thing to defend. I honestly regret doing it so much. Literally lost 5 years of my life to it. Just last month I was hiring a receptionist team lead for a clinic, and one of our candidates spent a good quarter of a page telling us about his boxing career, including statistics that meant absolutely nothing to me. I had a resume once where a guy had obviously just copy and pasted job descriptions as his work history. It was blatantly obvious because everything was in third person. Guy didn't even take the time to edit it. Candidate will be able to type wording. I gave him an interview and asked him tough questions based off of his supposed work experience. I was morbidly curious if he was just bad at writing resumes or just a lazy liar. Turns out he was the latter. When I interview someone, I usually try and ease up on questions when it's obvious the candidate doesn't have the required experience. I don't want someone living totally demoralized, etc. I didn't let up on this guy though, and when he couldn't answer a question I would comment that he had it listed in his resume. Hopefully he learned a lesson. There was a period where people would attach a photo of themselves on or with the resume. I had a young girl about 18-19 attach a photo to her resume. The issue was that the photo was of her in a bikini on her knees at the water's edge with her hands behind her head, sticking her chest out. She was smoking hot but did not quite make the short list. She may have gotten the job if we had an eye for tail and not detail. She should have checked what she was sending. The recruiting team at my company tossed away a CV from a guy because he had Domino's pizza delivery driver on it as his current role. When I'm hiring for my team, I make it a point to look at bid CVs just to check I'm not missing a diamond in the rough. When I looked at this guy's credentials, It turned out that he was driving for Domino's while completing his master's degree and he had technical qualifications up to his eyeballs. I hired him after bringing him in for interviews and he's now my right-hand man. Another guy I interviewed had a perfect CV but refused to shake my hand or make eye contact throughout the interview. That was a big nope. Another started ranting about his current company and how shit they are. Another nope. Hiring people is exhausting. Not doing any hiring, recruiting now, but when I did, a big red flag was when someone had a string of brief jobs, especially if they were all in the same field. If someone was young and worked 6 months at Big Hamburger and 6 months at Amusement Park X before entering the field, no big deal. If someone over 25 had a resume with every other mental health provider in the area and didn't make it any of those agencies, it was an indicator that they wouldn't be a good fit for us, either. A huge red flag but too late. The guy that showed up for the job was clearly not the same guy as was in the phone interview. Impossible to prove, and messy since he had been given the job. He's still with us. Too many jobs in too short period of time was always a red flag, but lately with all that's gone on, I've had 3 different jobs in a year when my original career was decimated by the pandemic, so I have a changed perspective now. Edit: red flag doesn't mean they're out or have no chance. It means I will dig deeper. Could be circumstances or it could be you. Depends on your qualifications and skills, not experience, that dictate my actions. Edit 2. Thank you all for the great discussions and stories surrounding this, trying to read them all and respond. Also, I was a hiring manager so I saw things a little different than a recruiter or hours person. I had to put the right piece in place to make my team atmosphere a non-toxic environment. Before word processing software and online applications, my 2 biggest red flags was not being able to spell the name of the school they claimed to have graduated from and the name of the street they lived on. Not currently either of the 2, but a friend of mine had a paragraph about his WoW gaming and his levels. He didn't get a job until he removed it. I was HR, hiring for a restaurant, and one of the Polish applicants had steroid and bodybuilding supplement supplier as his self-employment. That wasn't easy, no? Someone claimed to be a member of the New York State Bar, admission pending, which I thought meant that he had already passed the NY bar, but just needed to submit the doc requirements and take the oath. During the interview, I asked when he could start and he said right after he takes the NY bar exam later that week, then he could start right after. Okay. And I'm a PhD candidate too, just wait and let me submit my application. I left my previous job due to a bad manager who would bully and belittle us. She made our work lives hell and tried to do the same with our personal lives too. Then 3 years later she was fired. In that time I had been promoted at my new job and I was hiring my replacement. She knew I would be interviewing as my details were on the job advertisement, but she applied for the role with a copy of my CV with her name attached. She must have kept my CV from when I worked for her, which is a breach in data protection. But how on earth she thought I wouldn't notice or remember her truly goes to show how delusional she was. I was helping recruiting a new dev, but there was this one guy who was selected for the interview that I did not see, was checked by other team members. Alright. So far so good. It was strange that he went straight to the interview without doing a task first, but they said he was very experienced, so alright, he went to the interview and in the end the boss, who didn't know anything about code, was incredibly amazed. I think I never saw him that amazed at any other professional. Fast forward, dude was just a heavyweight on us. We were doing all the work. He was impossible to hit discussions with because anything different than his opinion or crossing the borders of his knowledge he was snap. He was way older than us and treated us like dumb children. He was far too old school and refused to upgrade his game. He was also earning far more than everyone in the whole company and he never did a task to get in. He just used his BS talk and sold him immediately as a genius, but 5 minutes into talking to him introducing ourselves and I noticed that he was a jerk who would make it hard on everyone. I keep a fairly low profile in my organization, and when interviewing to promote within, I have had people attempt to subtly claim responsibility for work they didn't know was actually mine. Usually people who do this aren't intending to lie, they just don't really recognize the depth of some of the things we do. Kinda related, we insisted on consultants doing a presentation, sometimes on a software item but mainly on our company history. Honestly, it wasn't about the content, but how they presented, dealt with questions, etc. We had one guy come in, insist that no one see his presentation ahead of time and that he'd bring his own laptop. We got suspicious and invited lots of people along, to be presented with a dramatized version of our company history made from badly formed Lego people, in which he had a script with awful punchlines. The final punchline got mixed up, so his dramatic ending was ruined by shuffling of papers, and a lot of them I got that wrong. He'd spent weeks on this, but zero time on how he was a good consultant or remembering his CV. Poor lad was terrible, and we just couldn't take a punt on him. I once saw a retail CV where the person said they had great attention to detail and then immediately followed that by saying they had extensive experience working with costumers. He forgot the serious tag, made skeptical. In a resume, red flags I've seen may be overly charged, resumed with meaningless information. Focus on what you know is relevant for the job. If it's not directly relevant but you want it mentioned, keep it short and to the point. I don't care about your GCSE grades or the entire curriculum of your courses. Just tell me what you learned that is gonna help you do the job correctly. I need to see why you fit the position advertised, not that you've done 1,000 irrelevant feats. A resume with a very high number of typos and spelling mistakes, a couple of errors here and there, I can understand, but if you clearly didn't make an effort to triple check your resume, or if you have issues or trouble in this area, didn't take the time to ask someone to help you with it, it tells a lot about the kind of work I can expect from you. I worked as sort of the HR person for a few years. We did sheet metal manufacturing, and we'd often advertise for general labor jobs. We often got applications filled out by people for whom English was a difficult second language. I laughed out loud at one application because where we asked something along the lines of what skills, qualities do you have that would make you an asset to our team? The applicant wrote 2 words, posture and beauty. That made me laugh for a few days until I realized there was a mattress manufacturer in town called Posture Beauty which also went through waves of hiring general laborers. Here I thought this guy was telling us he was eye candy. Still makes me laugh. I saw a lady set off her patient bathroom emergency alarm because there wasn't anyone at the front desk. When several people came to address the alarm, she started asking about a job. That is like calling 911, and when the police arrive, ask them about a job. For me, it's when someone who's young with lots of wordy descriptions for basic jobs. Senior executive in charge of caffeine distribution isn't the title. You got coffee. Embrace that. It's fine. If you were the best coffee runner, fine. Glorifying basic crap in a resume makes you come across as a liar. The resume is what gets you the interview, so if you're physically there it means your resume is good. Now if you don't know why you're there ... that is, you can't answer basic questions about the job you've applied for, or you just seem like a different person, it means that A, someone else wrote your application, and B, you haven't prepared either or both, or I've done a bad job and haven't caught on that you were obviously lying in your application. Hiring for a graphic design role, which has a lot to do with branding and making the brand distinctive, stick out from competitors. Applicant goes on about attention to detail and how she is a branding expert, puts our old logo, which we haven't used in over 2 years, on her application. Submitting a full-body photo with your resume, for an office job, for an acting job, sure, makes sense. For an office job, I've seen people include a headshot on their resume, which personally I think is weird, but okay, but you do not need to send a full body shot of what looks like yourself dressed up for some sorority event in college. It's creepy and comes off inappropriate. When I'm looking at multiple candidates with similar work experience, someone who inexplicably submits a full body photo with their resume is definitely not getting an interview. I wish I could say I've only come across this once. It's bizarre. This thread is depressing because it's making me realize just how nitty-gritty these details matter, but also how they really don't, because so much of this is up to the personal feelings about it. Also, overqualified is a measure of how long they think you will stay before leaving for a better position. The cost-benefit analysis of hiring and training you versus how long you produce actual value for the company before you deem your place too underpaid to be worth your time. This is a stupid measure that ignores that higher position jobs are in short supply and people need any work available. Well, I never really thought about the Earth being round or flat as a young child. When I got old enough to start asking questions about such things, I found out you can measure the circumference of the Earth with 2 sticks. Eratosthenes' method. I thought that was pretty neat, and considered the matter concluded for the time being. I used to be a flat earther. I mean, I looked around and as far as I could see, everything looked flat. The idea was simple and intuitive. When I looked down there was ground, and when I looked up there was sky. It was a simple universe. But then, as I grew older I started to read, and in kindergarten I came across a picture of a blue and green ball. I asked the grown-ups and they explained to me what a planet was, and I trusted them. As I grew older, I could also understand the simple basic evidence that the grown-ups were showing me. It was so obvious that the Earth was round. So yeah, for the first 3 years of my life or so I was a flat earther, but then as I developed half a brain, I came around. I have a secret for you. I can only reveal this now that it has been declassified by the CIA, NSA, and MP. There are no flat earthers in existence. It has all been a lie, initially fabricated by the Rothschilds, the Candy, not the illustrious family, and spread globally by Brian Reagan, the comedian. There are other, deeply powerful influences at work here that I'd mention, but they would just label this announcement as fake news as many others have, and thus the proof sinks beneath the waves. Replaced with the thoughts they, educators and scientists, people who can't tie their own shoes, aka the global conspiracy, want us to have. For more than 600 years, they have convinced us there was a secret cabal of people who actually believed the world was flat. I admit, I was taken in, too. Idiots, I thought. How can anyone, in the light of scientific knowledge, believe this? And so, given 2 hypotheses, one that scientists globally and throughout history have conspired for no reason to fool us about the shape of our world, and thus reap profits, versus this new theory, that there are no real flat earthers at all, and it's all a conspiracy, to get us to eat their candy and spend time watching YouTube videos. I offer my own scientifically rigorously and peer-tested proofs. Point 1. There are no schools, not anywhere, not any point on the globe, that teach flat earth theory. This is a proof point that if there were such people, there certainly aren't enough outside of psychiatric care facilities to gather together to form a college or university to study such phenomenon. Not one accredited school dedicated to teaching the truth has yet to promote flat earth theory in its curriculum. If there is omniscience, there must be, no science. Proof 2. All around the world, you will find not one person, lizard person or otherwise, willing to admit they believe this nonsense. Now I don't mean some guy on a web page you found in comments watching a YouTube video. I mean an actual person you can shake hands with. Lack of evidence of actual flat earthers proves there is not flat earth, if you ask me, which you didn't, but I'm still insisting I'm correct. Proof 3. So-called flat earths have yet to promote a single new idea in the last 300 years. What kind of science is that? I mean, are they really studying this phenomenon? Or just remaking the same videos with progressively worse soundtracks? Science without new ideas is just boring. Boring equals false, therefore no flat earth. Proof 4, has not one of these flat scientists been so bold as to trek to the edge of the world and photograph it? By now, you would think would have found one spot on the edge that was not being watched by NASA, climbed over the edge, and dangled their taking pictures of, I guess, the underside of the Earth. I've seen no pictures, therefore it is false. If I did see pictures, they were clearly doctored. Proof 7, I heard there was recently a global Flat Earthers Society meeting. Where did they meet? The center? That would be too obvious. And why did they use a globe in their name? Clearly the Rothschild Candy Company didn't hire the best marketing people for this meeting. Proof 12, what holds the flat earth up? Is it turtles? Again, what kind of turtles are they? Galapagos turtles? Oh. You know. The ones on the other side of the planet. Come on,